Welcome, crypto enthusiasts, to the Independent Reserve Podcast.
Already rolling episode 24 of the Independent Reserve Podcast. So today, Steve Orenstein. Man, I've already messed that again. I knew as soon as I asked you, I knew I'd mess that up.
All right.
That's all right. That's the beauty of editing. I can always do it again. Episode 24 of the Independent Reserve Podcast with Steve Orenstein from Locate Technologies. Aiming to be the Australian version of Michael Saylor. A huge announcement last week, and the market's been loving it.
That's it. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, for those who haven't seen. So effectively, what you're looking to do, Steve, is take the Michael Saylor playbook, bring it to Australia, of course, which we love, and see how it goes.
Yeah.
You're not the first actually to copy. There's a number of people now, which we'll talk about. I know there's a Japanese business that's been doing it, but definitely Australian first. And I'd love to hear all about sort of, I guess, the background. Obviously, you've got a background in crypto and you understand the Bitcoin story and all this kind of stuff. Yeah. But just from an ASX-listed point of view, it'd be fascinating to hear about like the journey you guys had to go on to bring on investors and the board and, convince people, I guess, something that people in the world of crypto have known for a long time.
Look, I mean, it was a long journey. Started back in 2014. So that's when the business originally started, and that was with our Zoom to You business. And so essentially that's a business where we're providing same-day delivery, 3-hour delivery across Australia. Lots of customers, small businesses, and some really large enterprises use us. Companies like Nespresso, Bunnings, DHL, and it's all around providing this same-day fast delivery where you can actually track the live location of the driver.
Gotcha.
And so that business evolved. 2021, we started, just before that, we started a business called Locate Technologies, Locate to You. And that's our SaaS product, which is companies that use our technology to run their own internal fleets of their own drivers. And so, I've previously sold a business and I wanted to keep this business and run this for the long term. And so part of that strategy was around allowing investors to come and go inside of our business and exit when they want to exit. And so doing that through a public company vehicle. So at the beginning of 21, we decided that it was the right time to list. And by September 21, we listed in the middle of lockdown in COVID. So it was a pretty interesting time. That process of listing is very intense. I think it's probably took us about 4 months, and lots of paperwork, lots of legal work, and lots of meetings. And then I was sitting in the office on my own, watching the screen with the ASX and a number of our investors, and the company joined the ASX and listed, and it's been a journey since then. Yeah,
well, fantastic. So you're the CEO and the co-founder as well. So you've got how many founders are there?
Just myself as the founder.
Oh, so not a co-founder, the founder.
The founder, yeah.
Correction.
Look, I think there's advantages and disadvantages of having multiple founders, and the advantage of being a sole founder is that you can make the decision, you can run really hard at it, you don't need to bring everyone else along on the journey, and so I think I really like that process of being able to move really quickly.
Yeah, awesome. Like I said, the announcement that you guys came out on Thursday, the market responded very well. I saw the stock was up 64%. Not bad for a day's work.
Exactly.
So obviously the market liked it. I'm sure you had to go through a number of discussions with your investors and your board and all that kind of stuff, because maybe they're not all in on Bitcoin.
Definitely.
A lot of us. But I'd love to get your story first. I mean, how did you first come across crypto, and obviously Bitcoin specifically? And then how did that evolve into you seeing what's happening with strategy and going, you know what, Australia needs one too?
Look, I sort of got introduced to crypto a number of years ago through a family member, and he's like, you need to look at this and you need to see what's happening across the world. And so at that stage, I sort of bought into it, bought some Bitcoin, and sort of didn't really understand necessarily what I was buying. But I think the first thing for me was like the moment I took it from an exchange and actually put it onto a cold storage, I was like, hang on, now I'm my own bank. And that was suddenly a light bulb went off, like, this is pretty amazing. You can actually do these transfers across the world in a matter of seconds, but also have a USB that you can actually take and then move across the other side of the world and be able to take that amount of money with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that was interesting. But then over time, my knowledge sort of increased, and particularly trying to understand, okay, what is Bitcoin, and then how does that interact with the rest of the world and the economics of the world, and what is fiat currency? And so reading books like Broken Money and really understanding, okay, well, we all believe this money that we have today is valuable, and why do we believe that, and what are governments doing, and the printing of money that's occurring throughout the world in lots of governments. And I think in the Western world, we haven't had the impact of inflation that's occurring in some of the other countries where it has had huge impacts on people where they've lost lots of wealth. And so, this got me thinking about it and really sort of taking a really deep understanding and a lot of listening to podcasts and a lot of reading to really grasp what Bitcoin actually is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I know when I first started, we had Lasanka hand us all a copy of the Bitcoin Standard and kind of said, here's your introduction manual. And reading Safe Dean's stuff on the, understanding the importance of having that stock to flow, ratios right, and the hardness of having this money and just how the loss of all other fiat currencies being inflated over time and all these types of stuff, and going, well, that just can't happen.
Yes, that's right.
For the first time in human history, we have something that can't be tampered with by governments.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, to have come up with this concept, back in 2009 when it first sort of started is quite incredible to really understand what was actually happening then and seeing how it's playing out today.
And I totally get it. And I'm really interested in the discussions you had. I remember hearing when Saylor was first having these discussions in private with his investors, and he was talking about it and saying, well, look, publicly, a lot of people would sort of shy away from it, but in private conversations, they were like, no, I get it. This is good.
Yeah.
In Australia, the TradFi guys seem to be coming around, but slowly.
Very slow.
Much slower than the tech guys and younger people who just kind of look at it from a more fundamental going, hey, they don't look at it from the system point of view where they're going, I work in this system, I understand the system, and the system's too important. Nothing's going to challenge this thing. Yeah. It seems to be harder for a lot of, people rooted in that world to kind of get their head around now, well, there's actually a better way. Just because you don't know about it, just because you don't understand it, doesn't mean it ain't so.
Yeah.
So how did those conversations go, and how did you get them across the line?
Look, the people on our board, they're very open to new ideas and new concepts. And, it took a little bit of time actually educating and actually spending time explaining and building a number of presentations. It probably took me about 6 months to really get them to understand, but also run them through the journey of what's going to be like if we start adding Bitcoin to our balance sheet. And it wasn't about losing focus on what our core business is. This is really important strategy for our core business, and how do we take our core business to a global market, and having capital available to be able to do that is really important. And so bringing them on that journey of saying, this isn't about us now just focusing on Bitcoin. This is a dual approach into.
Can you give us the pitch that you gave them to get them across the line and educate them?
Yeah, it started with a presentation, and it started with the basics, like what is money and what do we believe that money actually is today, and walk them through history. Like in history, there's been other sources of money prior to that, and so there's been gold, there's been shells, there's been all sorts of different things that people valued as what money is today. And we live in a world where we just believe in the fiat currency because that's all we've actually known, and suddenly now there's this change occurring. And so I think it was about a 20-page document that I walked through, and I think in the first meeting I don't think we got through it all, and then we sort of continued that sort of in further meetings thereafter.
Yeah, right. So you had to full orange pill everyone to kind of get them across the line.
Yeah, definitely.
So now they're all raging Bitcoiners that have just
definitely
dumped all their dollars for Bitcoin.
Well, not quite yet, but I think they're definitely coming around.
What was the big sort of pushback? What was the biggest pushback you got? What were the things they said, here's the things that kind of keep us up at night about this strategy?
I don't think anyone had anything like that. I think it was more that there was a lot of unknown and not necessarily having the detailed understanding of actually what is Bitcoin, and the limited in supply. There's only 21 million, and how governments can't actually just be able to turn this off. Like even if a government tried to turn it off, it would be it's virtually impossible. And so there's a lot of, I think, just understanding the detail of what the protocol actually is and how that actually operates.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think it was a journey in sort of speaking to other investors in the market and seeing what reaction that they would have.
Yep.
And most investors, particularly traditional investors, were fairly negative towards doing this. And so, I think it got to a point where it was like, no, I think this is going to be the right decision for the company and the right decision for all shareholders for the future, and not just thinking about it for this year, but thinking about building this company over the next 20 to 30 years. And I think this is a really important stage.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the market definitely liked it, and
Yeah.
that's a great result. It must have been a good feeling for you to watch that share price
Yeah,
head
definitely.
north and say, you know, we've got precedents here. Look, the market loves this stuff and it wants it.
Yes.
We've seen what happened with Metaplanet and obviously
definitely.
Strategy have done very well. Can you talk us through? I know you're a listed company and you can't tell us market sensitive stuff, but like to the extent you can you outline, I guess, the vision? I mean, first of all, the details of the announcement.
Yep.
That's obviously public information, but then I guess broadly speaking, how you plan to execute and grow your reserves over the coming years and months and to the extent.
Yeah, sure. No. I mean, I think this is it's a proven playbook, and Strategy and MicroStrategy previously have done this exceptionally well. And everyone, who's watching what they've done, but also what they're doing as well. There's a number of different steps that have been played out. I was fortunate enough to go to the US a few weeks ago to actually go to their conference where they spoke about in detail, the different things that they've actually been able to do inside of their business. And now you're seeing that playing out with Metaplanet. There's a whole bunch of others that are now starting to do this in overseas markets. And so what does that all mean? It means essentially increasing the amount of Bitcoin per share that you actually have inside of your business, and starting to look at what those KPIs are for our business that mirror some of these others across the world. And so, for us, we see what they're doing is very similar strategy to what we'll be playing out over the coming months ahead. And having a goal of increasing the amount of Bitcoin that we hold in our business as much as we possibly can over the coming months and years ahead.
Would it be safe to assume that a bit like other people who run this business, the amount of Bitcoin you have is the amount you have plus more?
I think so, and I think no one's going into this just being able to buy just one bit of Bitcoin. Everyone's looking at being able to accumulate more Bitcoin on their balance sheet and looking at different funding ways of being able to do that.
Yep.
And whether that is through equity raises or whether it's through debt, I think there's a whole range of different types of things that businesses can do to be able to do that.
Right. And do you think, do you know, sort of how many businesses worldwide that you're aware of either looking at this or have executed on this strategy or at least considering it and looking at it and going through the same, I guess, discussions that you went through?
Look, I think it's very hard to execute on this strategy, partly because you need a founder that owns enough of the company to be able to make this decision and to also then understand Bitcoin. And so those two things together are quite difficult. And so, what you're seeing right now is this early adopters. I believe there's probably about 90 to 100 companies.
Okay, 90 to 100. Okay,
that have done this globally. And some might be holding, 1 or 2 Bitcoin on balance sheet. And there's a couple of websites that sort of list these companies. But I think that number is actually growing.
It's growing.
And even at the strategy conference where it had Bitcoin for corporations last year, I believe there was about 70 people there. This year there was about 300 or 400 people there.
Right.
And they're expecting that number to double in the year ahead.
Yep.
And so I think this is definitely going to be where a lot of businesses are going to be thinking about how do we actually increase the amount of Bitcoin holdings on their balance sheet.
We've got incredible. But you can always claim you're the first Australian business. Well, maybe not the first Australian business, but it's definitely the first listed Australian business.
Definitely. So we're the first listed operating company that has Bitcoin, as far as I'm aware, on our balance sheet.
Nice. And for the, my question is then around, I guess, marketing this and getting the rest of, I guess, crypto natives will kind of look at this and go, fantastic. Right?
Yep.
Bitcoin guys, you've already kind of will look at this and go, well, this is amazing.
Yeah.
And we've been waiting for this. How do you think you'll go with that, I guess, that emerging market of people who are kind of, I guess, curious to kind of look about how this will follow out, and how do you convince the people who aren't yet fully on board, like as a business? How do you go out there and market it? How do you go out there and make sure that everyone knows that you're kind of doing this?
Yeah, I mean, I think that naturally will just happen as momentum starts to kick in, and I think for us, we make it a really easy way to be able for people to get some exposure to Bitcoin, and we'll see what sort of other products we come up with in the future that makes that even easier for them. I think Strategy have done this really well with a couple of their debt type products where it allows you to actually collect an interest rate on your money, but also get some exposure to the upside of Bitcoin through their convertible options that are available. And so, we definitely like what they've been able to do there and making this available for people who are looking for downside protection on Bitcoin and don't want just that full exposure to Bitcoin. I think that's going to be a really key thing.
Where do you think, I guess, who do you suspect will be the buyers? I mean, there'll be lots of, I guess, guys who get Bitcoin or have things like SMSFs and they want list exposure. They go, well, this is a great way to have a nibble at Bitcoin, even more Bitcoin exposure in my
Correct.
portfolio. Where outside of that, in terms of like, I guess, other businesses, I mean, institutional investors in your business, are some of those conversations starting to take place, or if they have, how have they gone?
Yeah.
Again, to the extent you can share.
Look, I think, self-managed super funds are definitely going to be people that will be looking at our company. And I think in time, as our market cap grows and as the amount of Bitcoin that we're holding, I think will hopefully become something that these institutional investors just can't ignore anymore. They can ignore today and they can ignore Bitcoin today, but I think there's going to be a point in time where they just can't. It's going to have to become part of your portfolio. And if you're not having an allocation to Bitcoin, then you're going to be losing out. And so, it'd be interesting to see how that plays out in the months and years ahead.
We have this conversation routinely, maybe not every day, but definitely every week, where someone from, particularly TradFi, the same people who would just have ignored it or just found it too easy to dismiss and said, it can't fit in. There's no way it would fit in my world, therefore it can't really exist. And that getting across that hurdle where people go, okay, just because I don't understand it yet, maybe I should take the time to understand this. Maybe this thing is actually going to become part of my world. And we're definitely getting a sense of that now, where people are saying, hey, I've ignored this thing for too long. A lot of people have the humility to go, I was wrong. Let's work out how to do it. And so professionally, we're in a spot where people, even if they in their personal lives can't really touch it, but I have conversations with advisors all the time and they'll say, oh man, I was wrong. I mean, I myself we've all had that conversation. Adrian, our co-founder, he was initially skeptical and now he runs, a permanent crypto exchange. People come around and I'm having that conversation just, I don't know what you want to call that conversation. The light bulb moment, I guess. And they're just sort of saying, but there's still, I guess, the big disconnect that we're seeing now is not that people aren't getting it. It's that it hasn't yet crossed over into their professional lives. A bit like with you guys, where they're into it personally, but they're like, how do I get this involved in my business, in my fund, in my clients' portfolios? Whatever it is, right?
And and I think you have to take a bit of like courage to actually be able to make that decision. And it was like, out of nowhere, I was suddenly at a board meeting talking about, Bitcoin and why we should be adding that to our balance sheet. And everyone's like, well, hang on, I thought we were a software business. And I'm like, this is really important part of how we grow our software business into the future. And I think it comes back to the fundamentals of what is money and really understanding what that is and understanding how much money is actually being printed in the US, but also in Australia. There's enormous amounts of money being created, which it's like a tax that you don't actually realize that is actually happening.
Yeah, absolutely. I've listened to lots of Michael Saylor. I think anyone in Bitcoin has listened to lots of Michael Saylor, and he's very articulate. He's obviously very intelligent guy. He's been super successful, and I've been interested to watch his kind of evolution of the way he's gone about describing the strategy and what it means to the world. And because Bitcoin, it's something that's like, it's really difficult to describe to someone who's used to the fiat system as to why this thing's important. Like everyone knows about this, the frog in the pot that's being slowly boiled, and they just don't notice. But one of the examples he gave, and I remember this is one of his early attempts to describe the importance of Bitcoin. He's probably improved it since, but he was kind of saying is, look, at some point, the example he gave was, let's say, for example, you're in a room and the room is losing pressure and there's like a rusty old, like what do you call it? Like a scuba tank in the corner or whatever. And his point that he was trying to make was, at some point when the pressure's going down, you kind of just have to do it. Right? It doesn't matter if it's maybe not the best thing, or his point was saying it's like, okay, maybe his point was saying at some point you're just going to have to take it. You're going to have to try it and see how it goes, and you're going to be uncomfortable. You don't know what's going to happen, but you're going to have no choice.
Yeah, that's right.
And he's definitely improved his pitch since then. And I don't think I probably, even with that particular one, maybe I didn't do it great justice. But his point is that, if the Bitcoins are right, and everything that's going on probably validates a lot of those views that have been held for decades now. Well, not decades, a decade now. Is that, people are going to be, if you're not actively doing the work to understand it and you're not actively exploring how you can involve this into your business, at some point you're just going to be dragged.
That's right.
So you may as well jump.
No, definitely. And I think the more work you do today, it makes it easier to be able to make that decision to really understand it. Most definitely.
Yeah. So for yourself and in your personal side, so are you Bitcoin only, or do you look at some other stuff as well?
Yeah, I'm mostly Bitcoin only. I do have some Ethereum, probably reluctantly. But, at some stage you thought maybe there was going to be the switch between Ethereum and Bitcoin. But yeah, Bitcoin really, I think, is the only holding that I think makes sense for today. And then part of that is because there's been such an adoption of what Bitcoin actually, of people going to Bitcoin. And you look at the adoption curve of like when the internet sort of started and the amount of people going onto internet, the Bitcoin curve is actually much faster than that.
Yeah.
And so I think it's all about adoption. It's, it's the network. Some people say, what about these other ones? Well, it's like saying, okay, we can be on the internet or you can be on this new version of the internet. Well, if there's no one on the new version of the internet, then it's not actually valuable. It's the network effect.
The network effect
is really, really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, we see this in the numbers as well. I mean, Bitcoin is still a household name. It has such an entrenchment now into the world, and even doesn't matter what level of crypto you're involved in. It doesn't matter whether you're a degen or deep into it. Like everyone knows that Bitcoin's still the king.
Yeah,
and it's got such a, and I don't see anything knocking it off anytime soon. That's for sure.
No, I agree.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to watch. The crypto guys, it's funny because they've been banging on about this stuff for a good 10 years plus, and they're finally now going, see, hey,
I told you.
But yeah, exciting times.
I imagine very rewarding for them seeing how this is playing out and seeing the adoption now sort of getting to that point where traditional finance are actually taking this seriously.
Yeah. Oh, well, it's fun. I'll tell you the story about how I got into it. And of course, I told this one before, Jared, I can't remember. And the exact same story. Everyone knows about the first time they thought they should buy Bitcoin and didn't buy Bitcoin. And for me, it was the exact same scenario where I was at a Bucks party in 2012. And it was a mate of a mate, and he comes up and he's talking. He's like, Lee, do you own any of this Bitcoin? You're in finance or whatever, aren't you? And I'm like, I didn't know anything about Bitcoin, but of course my reaction was, that sounds retarded.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on there. That's just, it can't be this, it can't be that. And, blah, blah, blah. And a bunch of reasons that were wrong, as it turned out. And I remember at the end of the discussion, he kind of goes, well, whatever, man. Like, I've bought my $500 worth. I'll just see how I go. And I was like going, you know what, maybe... I knew I was making stuff. Even then, I'm like, you know what? I didn't actually have a lot of good answers, but I'm sticking with it. And I remember thinking to myself, going, you know what? Maybe just go buy $1,000 worth and see what happens. You know what the price was, of course? Like $12 or something.
Oh no.
And I remember saying to myself, going, just Google how to do it. Just Google how to do it. And I Googled how to do it. And I'm pretty sure I probably even saw Independent Reserve back then. Actually, it was probably just before Independent Reserve. But there was plenty of options back then to buy it. And they were like, you could go to local meetups and actually pay cash for it. And, or you could go to Mount Gox, I guess, at that time then. And so I looked into it. And, of course, I didn't do it.
Yeah.
No, for no good reason.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I
probably lost it or traded or done something stupid. Anyway, such is life.
I think I've told a lot of people early on when I sort of first started buying, it's like, you should buy some, like just even a little bit. And, most people didn't.
I know, right? It's just such a mental leap. There's a great, Lasanka, one of the co-founders, he's in Singapore now. He had a meeting with me back when I was working in TradFi, and I had a meeting in 2016, and I wasn't necessarily like against Bitcoin at that point. I already kind of was licking my wounds because I watched it go from like a few $10 to like 20,000, and I'm like, well, then it would dive down. I'm like, well, it's over now, so I guess I don't have to worry about this thing. And he came, and he was telling me all the same stuff he's been sticking with about the hardness of money and the limited supply and, this global network, unsensible money, blah, blah, blah. And I liked it. I liked him. I was like, dude, this sounds great. But like at that point, I just couldn't, I couldn't turn around to the clients or the business and say, hey man, there's this cool thing called Bitcoin. We should do it. And we should invest a bunch of retirees' money into it. Right. Like, it just was, that was that, and now I guess it's 9 years on. But the story hasn't changed.
No.
By the way, he posted this on LinkedIn, and I told him about that story. He's like, I also remember you kicking me out of that meeting room afterwards. I'm like, I don't know if I remember that. I remember kicking you out, get out of my office and never come back. But anyway, all water under the bridge now.
Yeah.
But like I said, the issue was that there was a lot of people, even like myself then, and definitely like people now, and still that gap of going, okay, it's now safe. It's this thing that we should all be doing, and let's all just get on board. I guess when that damn wall breaks, and that's when you see that late majority of adopters really rush through.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
We're going to probably see Bitcoin at $1 million then, and it won't matter that I didn't buy it at $11.
Yeah, exactly. And I think people still talk to me today about what price should you be buying at today? And in fact, someone texted me on Friday saying like, well, what price are you going to be buying at? One, I can't tell you that, but like it doesn't actually matter what you're buying at today because this is a long-term investment. If you're holding it for the next 5 to 10 years, then today's price won't actually matter. And I remember when I was sort of buying my first bit of Bitcoin, and I think it was around about sort of that 10 to 14K mark thereabouts. And I remember trying to time it, trying to get it below, the 14K.
I needed $4 cheaper.
Yeah. And it just, in the scheme of things, it actually didn't matter. And I think that's going to continue to keep on happening for now until there is this huge adoption across the world, and it'll likely be in the millions.
It's, when you see something as I guess a real shift in paradigm, real shift in people's thinking, like the iPhone was probably this, and like Amazon and using this stuff. It's like, back in, when did Amazon list? In the early noughties?
Yeah, that's right.
It tanked, and everyone's like, e-commerce is over now. And you know what I mean? Yeah. And I'm sure there was people who were trading Amazon for like buying it for $3 and selling it for $6, talking about how they're the world's greatest trader.
Yes, exactly.
Or like Apple, same thing. Hey, look, I did a 50% in like 3 months. It's like, all you just do is hold and chill. Like if the idea continues to go the way it's going, I mean, you don't have to do anything. You just have to buy it and hold it.
That's right.
And this thing, if it works, it means that like 80% of the world's population is on it.
Yes,
you know what I mean?
correct.
And if 80%, I don't even know if there's not enough Bitcoin for everyone in the world, as we know.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's definitely going to be a very interesting time over the next little while. So we'll see how it plays out.
So in terms of your business then, what's kind of the plan to grow the business just in general? I mean, you continue to focus on your strategy, and how does that look? Yeah,
I mean, we've got two parts, one being our delivery business and then the other being our software business. And our software business is doing really well. And it's very scalable. We've got customers across the world, and we want to keep growing that. Mm-hmm. And so we're super keen on continuing to see how that business evolves. Mm-hmm. We've got a sales strategy, we've got a marketing strategy on that, and then we'll look to see, as our market cap grows, what funding is available for us to how we deploy that to help with acquisitions into the future. So we'll see. But
we'll see how it goes.
It's
you're going to have everyone asking you about your Bitcoin strategy. I guess it's going to be
I think for a little while potentially. But I think it's a way of helping us to capitalize our business. And I think there's an opportunity right now for businesses to be able to do this and use Bitcoin as a way to help them capitalize what they're doing.
It's going to be fascinating to hear, I guess. Hopefully you get other founders and other CEOs coming to you and saying, "Hey, Steve, this Bitcoin thing, how did you do that again?"
Yeah.
And then
I've already started to see, even on X, where there's a few CEOs of some there's one other large public company who's followed me recently.
Oh, here we go. Just having a look just to see what's going on.
So I think there will definitely be some interest that will occur. And I think every founder should be thinking about this. Yeah, definitely.
At what stage should businesses really be looking at this? I mean, do you think there's a certain type of business, or it doesn't matter?
Look, I think what you need to be able to be in a position is where you're probably not burning huge amounts of cash, and not needing this cash immediately. So if you need this cash in the next 6 months, you don't want to be touching that cash. I don't think, because Bitcoin is still volatile. It still has these ups and downs, and so you never want to have to be able to liquidate that position when you desperately need the cash. And so I think where you've got excess cash and capital available in your business, then being able to hold that in Bitcoin is important.
Actually, the other question is, so a lot of talk on everywhere, really, Twitter and LinkedIn, and we can't call it Twitter anymore. Sorry, X.
Yeah, it's so hard.
Look, everywhere you go, and everyone talks about Saylor being this kind of central, almost risk to Bitcoin now. Yep. I mean, ultimately, Bitcoin is always about being your own bank and being decentralized. Correct. But do we have a real centralized issue here? I guess the network is not going to be affected. Even if Michael Saylor got liquidated, the network's going to TikTok next block.
That's right.
It won't matter.
Yes.
But it'll certainly hit sentiment if strategy wipes themselves out somehow. But my understanding, and I think you probably know this better than I do, I hear Saylor talk about it, I'm like, it doesn't sound like he's getting liquidated anytime soon. No. But with his strategy, I mean, do you see some centralization risk there happening? I mean, like I said, to the extent that it might affect the price. And
yeah, I guess, I mean, if they decided to liquidate their entire position all in one day, I would say that would be a problem.
It doesn't seem like that's happening anytime
soon. I don't think so. And I don't think there's any chance of any of their different products they have available and being able to be liquidated. I think he structured those really well.
Can you give us a sense of how those things are structured to provide protection, just from it, like how do they work? So for the person who's listening and hasn't been following today's strategy, how do they structure it so that they are protected from that? I
mean, there's a lot of news articles that are out there that speak about this and how there was going to be this liquidation event, and that's usually when you're using some sort of margin type lending. none of his debt products, from what I understand, is anything like a margin lending facility. They're all convertible note type structures which convert, but the amount of debt that he's actually holding on his balance sheet is tiny compared to his overall equity position, and the overall Bitcoin balance that he's actually got.
Gotcha.
And so when you look at those loan to value ratios, it's a very small amount and very safe in terms of how they've actually structured it.
All right. Well, I mean, is there a theoretical point at which you'd have to sell at least some of his Bitcoin to?
I guess at an event where Bitcoin did drop dramatically, but even still, I don't. I mean, maybe, but I think it's very unlikely that would happen.
Yeah. Okay.
I think he structured it extremely well. He spent a lot of time thinking about this.
Smart dude. Yeah.
Yeah, he's very, very switched on. And I think the size of his Bitcoin holding is just so enormous, and the value increase that he's had on that Bitcoin holding is just so enormous as well.
Yeah, I'd love to flip on X and see your face instead of Saylor's, just with some excellent Bitcoin meme action going on.
We'll see.
Steve with some diamond hands, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, yeah. Are you going to build more of a profile on X and stuff?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's definitely part of our strategy. After our sort of first announcement, we did the live on X, which is the first time that we've done that.
All right.
And and you're starting to see some of the Bitcoiners starting to see and see what we're actually doing and follow us. And so now, I think it's about us executing on our playbook and making sure that we deliver on what we're saying we're going to deliver.
The Saylor talked often about the cyber hornets and the Bitcoin community online that kind of protects you from any sort of wrath. I mean, he must be the most loved guy on X. As soon as he posts, I mean, as soon as someone comes out, it's funny because on X, someone comes out negative for Bitcoin, and I mean, they become instant villains. We had chatted about it actually. Jared referred him as a cooker. I don't know exactly. We had Senator Jared Rennick came out, and he said, "Look, I don't know much about his position or whatever." He's a libertarian. I did have a quick look at him, and I looked on his X profile, and he came out and like his comments would get like 10, 20, whatever comments. He posted some stuff about negative, and he was inundated. Like he was
right.
just, there's like 600 comments under his like thing justifying why Bitcoin wasn't, what the Bitcoiners believed it to be. Right? Talk about cyber hornets. And he was. Just, I don't know what he's. I mean, I read his argument. I mean, he kind of went. Trust me, bro. I used to work in Treasury. I know how it works.
He said it was a giant Ponzi scheme, but it's going to $1 million.
Yeah. It was an odd conversation. But I think it was definitely a weird one for me when I was looking at it going, I know he's a libertarian. It's like, well, this is the ultimate form of, private money in a sense. Oh, no, it's not private. I guess it's public money.
Yeah.
That, it's
controlled by the people.
It's controlled by the people.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
There's no government intervention here.
Correct.
You can have freedom of your own money and freedom from inflation and
no one able to change the rules.
No one's able to change the rules, and it's like if people want it, like let people have it.
Yeah, correct.
Right? And he's free to have his own views on it. But I just thought it was surprised that a guy like him.
Yeah, same. Yeah.
But the cyber hornets are out there doing their job.
Yeah.
I don't know how he's feeling about it. He was good enough. I don't think he was being rude or. He wasn't taking that Peter Schiff going, you're all idiots, kind of like it's all going to zero. Yes. But he did call it a giant Ponzi, and he didn't really back it up. He just kind of was like, his view was kind of like, yeah, trust me, bro. I worked in Treasury. I know.
Yeah.
I don't know. It'd be fascinating. I think if Peter Schiff, who's probably the number one villain really for Bitcoin, if Peter Schiff came out one day and it's like I think he almost enjoys it now. Like he's got his points and he's been wrong, and everyone loves pointing out that he's wrong. And again, like you look on his Twitter feed, he only exists really to kind of like be this kind of like lightning rod for like Bitcoin is like attacking him because he'll make some comments about his general economic policy. He'll get like 10, 20, 80 comments. As soon as he posts about Bitcoin, bam, 1,000 comments. And he's like, it's like, Peter, you need Bitcoin now.
Yeah.
Your relevancy relies on Bitcoin.
He was the keynote speaker at
Bitcoin conference, yeah.
He's kind of this, everyone loves to hate him, but he's actually when you listen to him talk, he's actually, I mean, he seems like a really actually decent guy. He's really funny and not funny. I wouldn't say he's funny, but he's got a good sense of humor. Takes it on his stride. Yeah. But I think now for him, it's kind of like he just has to stick with his.
Yeah.
And
he's been at it for so long.
Yeah.
He's the Simon Cowell of finance.
Yeah.
Everyone knows that. Like, and actually, I think he said something along the lines. I didn't see his talk, but the excerpt was kind of like he was like, man, like to be honest, I've probably created more Bitcoin.
Yeah. Every time he says don't buy, then people buy. Yeah.
I'm one of the number one reasons Bitcoin adoption has been spreading.
Yeah.
But he sort of takes it in good humor. But honestly, if he came out, I know that's his public persona now. He's an anti-Bitcoin guy, and I guess he doesn't care about being wrong about it. It's not about that anymore. But even if he came out and was like genuinely like, you know what, I was wrong, and I love Bitcoin and all these properties. He's a big gold bug. You'd think, Peter, you should be on the same side as the Bitcoiners, right?
That's right.
But that's what makes even less sense about it.
Well, I mean, I do wonder.
People would embrace him. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, his business is to sell gold. And so if he does suddenly think Bitcoin is the alternate and better than gold, then what happens to his business?
Yeah. Just quietly do it. But it's funny. There's everyone knows, again, this public persona versus what he's actually like. Max Kaiser, you know Max Kaiser surely from.
No, I don't think I do.
He's great. His stuff's just hilarious, and he's a absolute Bitcoin maxi, and he just but he does it in a way. He and Stacey, his wife, they do have their own show, and he's always out talking, and he does a thing where he's always like ripping up money. He's like, all your dirty money is going to zero, and Bitcoin's the hardest money ever. But he does it in a like kind of, I don't know what the term is, bombastic. I don't know, like he's this big sort of larger than life character, but he's absolutely fascinating to watch. I think he's hilarious. But yeah, he can be a bit much probably for a few.
Yeah, right.
Him and Peter Schiff, he's always getting Peter Schiff and stuff. Yeah. It's like these anyway. Yeah, you go check him out. But I think, I guess back to the point we're talking about, like there are still a lot of people out there who they're still working their way through it. It's going to take time to get it.
Yeah.
People who just buy it because at some point they're like, oh, geez, they're not even thinking about it. Like we think about it, I guess. But most people just don't even think about it.
Correct.
Right. And eventually they'll have to, and they'll be like, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
It's another thing.
I mean, I think it's one, there's either just going to be this enormous adoption and people will just start having to jump on, or they'll be like, hang on, I need to actually spend some time to actually understand it. And at that stage, then they start to think about it and actually understand the details of what is the network, how does the protocol actually work, and then what is money. And once you work all those things out, then it becomes quite easy to say, okay, Bitcoin is the way of the future. Yeah.
And so with your actual sort of execution strategy and sort of how the custody side of it's going to work, I mean, how have you sort of worked all that out?
Yeah. So obviously buying through an exchange, independent reserve, which is good. And that's where I bought my sort of first Bitcoin many years ago.
Yeah.
And so being able to do that is important. Having to be able to move money from your fiat banking system into an exchange is important. And then we've got a custodian provider that we'll be using that's institutional grade custodian to hold and safely look after our Bitcoin for the future.
Okay, great. Yeah, nice.
And I imagine as time goes on, then we will start to have multiple custodians, so we'll start to split up that risk profile.
Yep.
And then I think the interesting thing is thinking about strategy hasn't actually shown their public address publicly, and is that something we are or aren't going to do? And Michael was quite anti that just recently for a number of security reasons, and so and I think it's also one of probably the biggest things as being a public company is you don't want to be showing movement on that ledger if you're buying new stuff and you haven't actually announced it to the market. And so I think that's the most challenging thing rather than necessarily a security thing.
Yeah, there's some legalities and stuff around it. All right. Well, I'm hoping that. I'm sure Michael Saylor he watches all our live streams. I'm sure he's watching this.
Absolutely.
And Michael, once somehow on the internet, just needs one or two. I'd love to see a tweet from Michael and
definitely
sort of saying, hey, it's happening.
Yeah. No. I'm look, a big fan of what he's been able to do, and I think he's been very generous in sharing his playbook to companies around the world. And so I think that's been really good. It's been really good for Bitcoin in helping that sort of grow globally.
How many people do you know how many people at Strategy kind of run it? Because, it's probably not that many.
I believe it's around about 15 people. And so I think that's a mixture of people helping with execution and custody, as well as the legal aspect of what they do.
Of it all. Finally, a Bitcoin business on the ASX.
That's it.
I don't know. I suspect, I don't know if the guys ever discussed the listing or whatnot. I have no idea, but it'd be really interesting. I know there's some other Australian businesses like Dan Roberts from RS Energy and whatnot. I don't know why his decision. Oh, he did. They ended up listing on the NASDAQ.
Yeah.
I don't know if he ever had any discussions with the ASX or whether they said, hey, we're just not ready to do crypto businesses or Bitcoin mining businesses, and that's why he went overseas. I suspect it's probably because capital markets over there are much, much deeper, and you need a lot of capital to run businesses like definitely. RS Energy and the like. But yeah, I guess I was just curious to see. I mean, this would be potentially the first a crypto related business?
There's one other. So there's one other, like it's basically a fund, Digital X.
Oh, Digital X, yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
that's a fund. That's not
right.
an operating company.
That's
like.
right. That's right.
Yeah. I haven't seen the crew from Digital X. I think Lisa was there, but I don't think she's there anymore.
Yeah.
Running out, so
Correct.
be interested to see how they're going. But like I said, I mean, in Australia, I guess, I mean, the ETFs have been huge for Bitcoin globally, and most Australian investors probably have access to the IBIT shares and all that kind of stuff. And I often get asked this question. They're like, well, if there's any of these ETFs around there, won't that impact your business? I mean, people asking us as the exchange.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, no, not really.
No,
because I mean, the essence of Bitcoin, you still want to hold the physical. Like,
Correct.
There are people who will buy the ETF for the exposure, and there's plenty of people out there. But like anyone who really understands Bitcoin is always going to want to hold the physical.
Yeah, definitely. And I think in our view is that we'll ultimately be able to give investors a leverage play on Bitcoin.
But that's
Yeah, and so we'll have one where we're using our equity, but others where we're using some sort of debt type product to allow us to buy more Bitcoin into the future.
Mm-hmm. What actually? I've asked this question before, but I just popped into my head. Like the first time you brought up with the board, I mean, how did that go down?
I mean, there was definitely some looks.
Yeah, I bet.
And I think there was like somewhat surprised because I don't think I warned too many. Maybe I did warn them a little bit. And there was, definitely like skepticism as to, okay, why are we doing this? Is this a diversion from our current strategy? And then bringing them back to, no, we've got a really important strategy of how our software business is going to grow into the future. Mm-hmm. But we need to make sure that our business is really capitalized to be able to execute on that. And this is the best form of capital that I think is going to allow us to do that. And I think once you step back and go, hang on, what is money? Why is, when you go to the grocery store, why does, the loaf of bread or the milk cost so much more than what it did, years ago? Then it starts to make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And so it's just having that really deep thinking of being able to understand all those different things, and then understand why Bitcoin and why probably today it's the best time to be in Bitcoin. Mm-hmm. US government now creating their own strategic reserve. A lot of the legislation has been improved in the US. There's a lot of things that make it sort of the best time to be able to get involved in Bitcoin.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's the whole. Where do I go with it? I guess the adoption of Bitcoin now is definitely at an inflection point where, we often talk about you need to have all these pieces in place. Like go back, just not even a full cycle, like barely 4 years ago. And people would have said, hey, for full Bitcoin adoption to take place, you needed things like the ETF and the US government on board, and a few other things like that. Michael Saylor mentioned some other stuff about change to the accounting standards.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
The reflection of the fair value and all this kind of stuff. And over time, like all those pieces kind of like fell into place.
That's right. They've all happened. Yeah.
And so you go, well, hang on, the on-ramps into Bitcoin, the risk to your reputation and all these types of things are just falling away.
Correct.
And the on-ramps have just never looked quite so better. It's just the last piece is kind of that the mental leap from the humans who aren't quite getting it yet to go, oh, hang on. It's a race to get this thing.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think that's where we're at right now. I think a lot of the risk has been taken out in sort of acquiring Bitcoin. So, I think it's an exciting time. I mean, it's still a volatile asset. It's still going to go up and it's still going to go down. But I think the key thing is understanding the fundamentals as to why you're actually owning it allows you to actually ride through those times where it does go down and not actually worry about, I've just lost X amount of dollars. I know people that now think about their wealth in terms of how many Bitcoins they actually own and then convert everything back to like the Bitcoin value.
Yeah,
which is an interesting way of thinking. I mean, we all think about our money in terms of fiat currency, but in time that might actually shift.
Yeah, absolutely. We chatted about this last week with Nick, and in Japan, for example, people were speculating. I guess I don't have the numbers, but sort of suggesting that in Japan there had been so much shenanigans with the bond market and the way they sort of manipulate their yield curve and all this kind of stuff, that there was a broad-based kind of like shift within Japan to go, because like Metaplanet's a Japanese business, and the next wave of crypto adoption maybe happened through Japan as they all kind of like, the bond market, as we know, is so huge, and it's the dog, and the equity market's the tail, and who wags who, but like all of a sudden, if there was some kind of like ruption or turmoil in the bond market where people went, you know what? I'll tell you what's better than the bond market right now. We're going to flee to, and it was like Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Could you imagine?
Yeah.
The world we would live in and how much dramatically that would shift in just a few years' time if everyone was like parking their money in Bitcoin as opposed to bonds and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think that's definitely realistic.
Which is crazy to think about. I mean, if that happened, like we would truly see some form of hyper adoption.
Yeah, definitely.
Because the number would just be skyrocketing and everything else would just look like, you know, it's trash.
Yeah. I mean, I've sat in a couple of the MetaPlanet presentations, and they show a photograph of their shareholder meeting, the first shareholder meeting when they adopted Bitcoin, and it probably showed like 20 people in the room. And then they show a year on and their shareholder meeting and the amount of people in the room, and it looked like there was like thousands of people there. And like people were standing, like it was just an amazing photograph.
That's the thing that blows my mind. There's so many people who go, they think that. I've used this example a bunch of times where you talk to people and they'll be like, oh, you're into crypto. And they're like, a lot of people who are just like, just explain it to me. I don't get it. Like, they're genuinely curious and they want to understand. And I often sort of like, it's a bit like trying to, I don't know, fill a well with a teaspoon. Like there's a lot of, you know, you kind of like fall down the hole and you kind of just go, oh, wow, this is much bigger than I expected. So trying to fill people into it, I'm always saying to them, like, you just kind of have to get involved and see it. But when you see it and you see the amount of people who are involved, and it's almost like if someone told you, hey, I know you lived in Sydney and you've lived in Sydney your whole life, but do you know underneath Sydney there is a city that's like, I don't know, a few suburbs big, underground, completely stocked out, like a adult Disneyland. How long has it been there for? Oh, like 10, 15 years. And like, you're like, what? What? How do I get to this thing? And you're trying to explain it. Like, no, your whole life. Oh, well, sorry. Since 2009, there's this new growing city underground, and it's awesome. It's like this adult Disneyland, and everything's cool, and everyone's having a good time, right? And it's almost like that kind of that's the kind of leap you have to go to. They're like, what? I didn't know this place was there. And then they go there, and they're like, holy shit. I didn't realize this place existed. And then they go there. Jared's always coming up with some meme coin or whatever. But you jump online, you buy some crypto and you go and participate in, you know, some of the DEXs and the communities and the cultures. You're like, no, there really is a
definitely
culture that's much, much bigger and much more vibrant and much more happening than people realize. Go to Token or go to any sort of the crypto events and you can kind of see it. It's probably the one time, like a bit like the mushroom, it pops up and you can actually see it. And then you go to a TradFi conference and it's, you know, I'm not saying that it's not as good as the crypto ones, but it's a bit less vibrant. It's a bit more like, you know, people just going about their day. It doesn't quite have that buzz and that excitement of this new kind of
definitely.
You know what I mean? It's really difficult to kind of explain that to people. You kind of just got to go and see it and got to participate and, you know, and then when they see it, they're like, whoa. Yeah. And then you kind of win them over.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, and I think you think about even just, you know, today making international transfers and how long that process takes and all that technology is all very old, very outdated, very, very difficult to now repair and replace. Whereas Bitcoin solves all of those problems and just, you know, being able to transfer money in seconds between different countries and directly to that person and not involving an intermediary bank or anything like that.
Yeah, I talk to guys all the time from various Web3 protocols, and they live a lot of them live this kind of digital nomadic life, and you know, they're running these protocols. They've got these ideas of how they're going to build, a protocol for whatever, lending, borrowing, staking, whatever they're building, right? And they, you know, you ask them, how do you raise your money? Well, like, we just go to the internet. We get internet money from people on the internet, you know, and, you know, that's just how we raise it. So they raise their money in crypto. And I always try and explain this to, they're like, these guys have built this protocol. And I don't know, maybe they're like, some of them are here, some of them in the Philippines, some are in, you know, England, some of them are in Thailand, wherever people are living. And this team have built it and they've gone out to their network of people and they've raised it all in USDC or USDT or ETH or Bitcoin or whatever they've raised it in. And it all goes into the smart contract and then people can kind of see, you know, where the investment is. And they're like, well, what do they do? I'm like, they just live in crypto. They get paid in crypto. They live in crypto. They just live in another world now that's completely detached, separate from the world that you've always inherited. And they're like, what? How long has this been going on for? I'm like, dude, it's been going on for definitely been going on since the last 5-6 years. I work full time in it, and it's only growing. The more I see about it, the more it's growing. And it really takes people by surprise. They just don't know this stuff's happening. So I feel like this separate world, I don't know if that's a great analogy. Jared didn't seem too stoked by it. So he's like, what the hell are you talking about, you idiot?
Trying to figure out how to make it into a clip.
He's like, you're like, the hell are you talking about? Underground worlds, mushroom people? Shut up, man. But anyway, this, for the people who are in crypto, it just becomes very normal. People who are in Bitcoin kind of get it now. There's this, there's this borderless, I guess, society that exists on these crypto networks. In Dubai, this is an aside. In Dubai, I was going to a bunch of side events for Token, and one of the events I went to was like one of the golf ones where you go and you play golf. And I was in a booth playing with these 5 or 6 guys, and they were all young guys, probably in their early 20s, and it was the first time they'd ever met themselves in real life, and they were saying they were calling each other by their names that they knew each other by online, because this is the first time they'd ever met in real life. 4 or 5 people. 2 guys from the UK, 1 guy was from the US, another guy was living in Dubai or something. And they were professional like airdrop farmers. That's what they did. They were just DeFi farmers.
Yeah, right.
All they did was harvest all these airdrops, and they were carving out this life for themselves, living great. And they would finally met each other for the first time in Dubai at this like golf event. Okay. And I was like, wow, imagine going back even, I don't know, how far you go back, a few years back, and going, well, this is how young people communicate and live and do business these days.
Yeah, no, that's right.
What's up, your mama 420?
It's basically like that. And like they introduced their names, but then I noticed they were all just referring to each other by their online names. That was right. I guess that was their new.
How funny.
Yeah.
How funny.
Yeah. Because they seem to be knowing it. They seem to know each other, like they're good mates and they're having a good time and they're chatting about this, that, and the people they knew. I was like, oh, how long have you been? Yeah, I asked them, how long have you been friends for? Like, this is literally the first time we've met each other in real life.
Wow.
So, Michael Saylor's open strategy is a strategy that's very open.
Yep.
Could that be used by a counterparty or a third party, knowing his strategy, which doesn't change? Could that be used by a third party or bad actor to tank him or to liquidate him?
I think many people have tried, and I think there's been a lot of people that have been shorting their stock, but just haven't been successful. And ultimately, he owns Bitcoin. He's got a very carefully thought out amount of leverage on that Bitcoin as well. And so, yeah, I don't think it's possible. Who knows? Who knows? I guess it depends on how he's buying, and yeah, I would say so. I think it all is. I think he's using. Yeah, I don't know who he's using, but yeah.
Yeah, I think he said he uses. Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
it's not us.
No,
not yet. Anyway,
not yet. That's it.
Not us anyway. Yeah. Oh man, fascinating. It's going to be fascinating to watch. I mean, like I said, if what people say about Bitcoin has been right, and I don't need to run through all the arguments. It's kind of like, if it's a freight train, it doesn't matter who you are. Stand in the way at your own risk.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I would not want to be shorting his company. I mean, the speed and velocity that he's got at being able to acquire Bitcoin, and he's got multiple different products that are available to him and to be used at different times. And so, yeah, there's so many different things that he can be doing. And he spoke about it at the Bitcoin conference recently, like what would he do if his stock price went to $0 or went to $1, and he would then buy back his stock. And he's got so much Bitcoin on his balance sheet that it's going to make it very difficult for someone to be able to do that.
Yeah, I guess people would be looking. I mean, strategy is one thing, and they're kind of the big fella in town. But MetaPlanet is a recent success story.
Yeah,
there's actually very analogous to what you're doing.
Yeah.
So perhaps talk us through what happened there. Maybe as I know we can't give financial advice, but maybe as a foreboding to what we could see with low-tech technologies.
I mean, look, MetaPlanet has done phenomenally well. I think over a year ago, they were a 15 mil market cap company. They're now, I think it's like $3 or $4 billion market cap. It's ridiculous what's happened. I mean, there's some in every one of these Bitcoin treasury companies. They operate in different markets, and there's different rules in those different markets. And so in Japan in particular, I don't think there's an ETF. There's no available to have Bitcoin available via an ETF. And so people in Japan have piled into this stock, but now it's people in the US are piling into it and throughout the world. And I think they've done a very successful marketing. They've played out that strategy of consistently being able to buy Bitcoin, having a number of different products, allowing them to be able to raise capital to buy more Bitcoin. But they've done exceptionally well. But you're seeing this repeat play out. There was a smaller company in the UK about 8 weeks ago called the Smarter Web Co. They listed a brand new IPO, and they went from nothing to I think it was over $1 or at £1. And done exceptionally well in a very short period of time.
Yeah. No, won't be long. We'll be looking at the stock ticker codes, looking at the ASX top 50. You know, there'll be CBA, BHP, LOC,
That's
just
it.
household names.
Fingers crossed.
That would be phenomenal.
Yeah.
I'd love to see it. And then, you know, do you think there's any chance that would see sort of the household names, like someone like a BHP or anyone like that, eventually do this thing? Was like,
I think when they do it, it will become completely normal to be doing it.
it'll be just standard.
I think it's for today for a board to sit there and you know, if you're a BHP or, you know, Apple or Microsoft to make this decision, I think it's too hard. There's going to be too much blowback from shareholders to be able to do this.
Unless it's super commonplace.
Yeah,
and it's
I think
kind of
so.
like it's now seen as the thing you have to do.
Yeah, like you really need to be taking a really bold step and to have real conviction and courage into making this decision, and to be prepared to say, well, I could buy Bitcoin tomorrow and the price could drop in half.
Yeah.
But I'm okay with that because I believe in Bitcoin and I'm holding it for the long term.
Yeah.
And you've got to have that conviction to be able to do that. And I think that's very hard if you're a public company CEO without much stock, much ownership in that business.
So it's just for pioneers only at this stage.
I think so.
It's the great trek across the West.
Well, I think once we see that shift, then you know this train's really running. But I think that's probably still a few years away. And maybe there will be some sort of catalyst that's going to help us to make that happen. You may see a bank blow up. And there'll be a bank run, and then suddenly people are like questioning this. Well, what is happening? You know, how much money does a bank actually have? I mean, you know, we live in a world where it's the fractional banking system. Most people think that all their money is actually sitting in the bank, but it's not. It's like it's a few percent of your actual overall money is actually sitting there available to be withdrawn.
Yeah, that's right.
Which is kind of crazy to think about that.
Yeah, well, the ghost of the GFC still lingers, but it was 2008. It's a long time ago. We're closer to 2 decades ago than we are, you know. But it still lives fresh in people's minds. It feels like, but I don't know if much has actually changed since then.
I don't think
apart
so.
from the advent of crypto, Bitcoin was born off the back of that.
And I guess knowing that
maybe that it would be ironic if the next GFC was when Bitcoin became, you know,
could be.
thing.
Yeah, that's right. And then governments are going to bail the banks out, which means they're going to print more money, which everyone's going to have this tax that they don't actually realize, and inflation will incur. So
yeah, everyone's going to have to jump on that old rusty scuba tank
that's
when
right.
the pressure
That's
drops.
right.
Thank you for
That's
that.
right.
Thank you for that budget analogy, Michael Saylor. I made a hash of it.
Are you across any quantum risk to blockchain, or whether quantum element could be the next generation?
But I think like the quantum computing argument doesn't just affect Bitcoin; it affects everything. And it's like all the banking systems, everything's in trouble. And so I imagine, you know, the Bitcoin community is already working on this. There'll be an upgrade that will happen at some point in time. And that's going to happen, across the world.
I feel like if there was quantum computing hack, because everyone goes, oh, well, when quantum computing comes, it'll destroy Bitcoin. It's kind of like, encryption of all kinds will
Correct. There's a big problem.
And if there was I don't know who's going to come up with the first quantum computer, but maybe the North Koreans, maybe it'll just be somewhere maybe be the Australia CSIRO. Who knows?
Microsoft already came out with their 100-qubit chip.
Does it work though?
Yes.
Have they cracked?
I think
Bitcoin?
it's still years away from being able to be.
Yeah, they've done a proof of concept.
Yeah. But it's definitely going to happen,
Yeah.
and there will be upgrades that will be needed to be done to the protocol, but that's going to be the same with everything.
The same as everything, yeah. And if that's everyone says that, but I would have thought if I was all of a sudden some supervillain and I have control of this now, like perhaps I'd start blackmailing the government first, and you know what I mean?
Probably.
Why would I necessarily go after Bitcoin and destroy the value?
Correct.
So they're saying that the current SHA-256 encryption, even if you increase the complexity by a factor of 1,000, it would just take a quantum computer a few more seconds.
Wow.
Wow.
So
So it's definitely going to be a problem, but I think it's not going to be just Bitcoin.
It's going to be,
It's going to be everything.
probably a quantum solution.
Correct.
Fascinating. Well, I guess it's all theoretical at this stage. We'll go back to bartering cigarettes and
That's it.
what was the name of that stone thing for the original form of money? What was it called? Goats.
I mean, there was souls, there was shells.
Handing out dowries and our family members and all this kind of stuff. No, there was a name, because my memory's not great, but they talked about in the original form of money, there was that stone. What was the name of that stone? You know the thing I'm talking about?
It's just a circular stone.
Yeah, where they kept a record of who owed what.
Yeah.
Man, we should know this. I mean,
Yeah, I know.
saying we're into Bitcoin, we can't remember the name of that stone. Jared's going to madly Google it. We'll find out there. Yeah, I can't remember the name, but you know,
Yeah,
I guess we're going to go back to
yeah,
that
exactly.
Ray, R-A-I.
All right, the Raystone.
there
Was
you
it
go.
Raystone? The Raystone. We're going to go back to Raystones and cigarettes for bartering.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Well, funnily enough, will we see still listed companies when they get quantum computing? I guess we'll still have listed companies, and everyone will be going deep into Marlboro 25s in their treasury.
It'd be menthol cigarettes.
Menthol
They're banned now.
because nobody wants them, and vapes and all kinds of stuff. Yeah. No. Awesome. All right. So when did you first get it? Let's start with this. Look, first of all, when did you first start buying Bitcoin?
I think it was like 2018, thereabouts.
2018.
18, 19.
Yep.
I remember the price being sort of sitting around that sort of 10 to 14K mark, Aussie dollars.
Okay. And what's since you started buying Bitcoin on actually since you founded LAC or sorry, Locate Technologies, what's been sort of what was the big shift with Bitcoin that made you decide to do it?
I mean, I think I started seeing this change that was happening. I started really considering this just before Trump got in. My sense was that Trump was likely going to get in. He was a big, very pro Bitcoin, very pro crypto, and I thought the adoption is going to start to increase. But also seeing companies like Metaplanet, Strategy, and others sort of deploying this onto their balance sheet.
Okay.
And that was for me is like, yeah, I want to be the first to do this in Australia. I want to run this public company for a long time. I want to be able to use Bitcoin as a way to be able to capitalize this business. And I think if you're buying Bitcoin today, that's going to be worth a lot more money in 5 to 10 years' time.
Yeah. Okay. And what will it take for other listed companies to follow your plan?
I think it's having a CEO and founder that's willing to take that step and take the courage in jumping over that leap to say, yes, we're going to actually hold some of our cash in Bitcoin and continue to acquire Bitcoin onto our balance sheet. And so maybe that is further this year, or maybe it's going to take a little bit longer to see more companies that are doing this and see what happens to companies that are doing this as well.
Right. And do you have any predictions for us for the Bitcoin price? Where do you think we'll be in the next 5-10 years?
Look, in 5 to 10 years, I'd be surprised if we're not talking about it in the millions. I'd be very surprised. I think the level of adoption that's occurring today, there's this limited supply. The level of corporations that are now looking at this and seeing, when I go to these conferences and seeing the number of corporates that are there today and then what they're predicting about next year and how many people are going to be there. I think the more people are doing this flywheel is starting to kick in and the price will run because there isn't the Bitcoin available for everyone to actually own. Yeah.
And what's been, I guess, what has surprised you about your shareholders when you what was the biggest surprise that you found once you announced this to your shareholders?
I mean, I think a lot of our shareholders know me and know that I take a thoughtful approach to anything that we do inside of our business. And like, okay, well, we're going to back me in making this decision, but a lot of them have no understanding of what Bitcoin actually is. And so it's taking them on a journey, letting them actually understand it and take them through actually what is Bitcoin at the end of the day and what is money as well, and comparing those two things together. Yeah.
And as it relates to, I guess, companies holding Bitcoin on their balance sheet, is there any sort of like law changes or regulations or policies that you'd like to see a current or future government implement?
I mean, I think it's thinking about the accounting standards. The accounting standards are going to need to be changed. Today, they've been changed in the US. I suspect it's only a matter of time where it changes in the Australian market. From what I understand, we account for it on our balance sheet. We don't get to account the rise in the value of the Bitcoin, but we definitely have to account for when the rise of the Bitcoin drops in value, which doesn't make sense. And so we'll have to articulate that to our shareholders to make sure they understand that. But that's okay. I think in time that will change, and we'll be pushing for that to change.
Okay. And in TradFi world, what do you see as being, I guess, the largest hurdle to getting more people on board with?
Education. I think it's just getting them to get their head around what this actually is, why it makes sense. And I think, hopefully we'll become a stock where they won't be able to ignore. And I think their investors will be saying, well, shouldn't we be having a small allocation of Bitcoin in our portfolio? And I think that's going to become more and more. And I think financial planners are also going to be being put under pressure to actually say, you need to be able to have X amount of percentage of your portfolio in Bitcoin.
And I've got no doubt Michael Saylor is the number one fan of this podcast. If he's listening, what would you tell him?
I think,
or ask him maybe.
I think I would he's done a lot of work for the industry and a lot of work in explaining and educating the traditional finance people, but also educating companies like myself in that he was first to do this and pioneer this, and then showed a playbook that could be done for other companies across the world. And I think without that, a number of us companies that are now public companies adopting this strategy wouldn't have been able to take that step.
That's right. Hey, Michael Saylor promised a yacht party for when it hit 100K. Did he ever do it?
There was definitely a party in Miami.
Oh, there was a party.
There was. Yeah, I wasn't there.
Oh, that was going to be my next question.
Yeah.
How was it? Yeah. He loves. Well, his name's Michael Saylor, but he's always got the imagery of like sailor stuff. He loves boats. He loves those old boats. He's always got that image.
Yeah. Okay.
In the back of his office. You remember that pimpin' office that he had, and it had the big sailboat stuff in the back.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. I don't know if it's just a play on names or he actually enjoyed boating.
Oh, he lives in Miami, so it's probably a good spot to be on a boat.
Oh, he lives in Miami now. He's always lived in Miami?
Don't know.
Oh,
definitely there now.
Nice. All right. Well, I guess the important question is, Steve, we've been running for a bit over an hour. Thanks for sharing, I guess, all your plans and your strategy and how you're doing this. It's just exciting to see an Australian business take the leap and do this.
Yep.
In Australia, we're so, and sometimes it's fair enough, we're criticised for just being not that innovative, which is a shame because Australians are very innovative. We have the CSIRO who does all this stuff, but the ASX just feels like the companies that were big 20 years ago, they're still the same companies that are big now.
Correct.
It's not like when you look at the NASDAQ or the New York Stock Exchange and new companies and techs coming on board. Banking and mining is just...
Yeah.
So when are we going to see LIC in the top 50? ASX.
That's a question I can't answer. But look,
I'll answer for you. Just a couple of years. I'll give you 18 months.
Yeah, I'm very excited about what we're doing, and I think this is very interesting times, and so we'll see how it plays out in the years ahead.
No, people do your own research, not financial advice, all that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
But have a look at LIC and see what you think.
Thanks,
no, awesome. And how do people get in touch with you, Steve? What's the best way to keep up with the updates, keep up with the information?
LinkedIn. I'm also on X as well. You can just search my name, Steve Orenstein, and you'll find me.
Yeah, okay. Michael Saylor, give us a like,
Exactly.
give us a follow, give us a retweet.
Exactly.
Let's go. All right. Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Lee.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers.